Hey y'all, welcome back to Ray of All Trades. We're working on a Stihl BR380 blower. This thing is in no start condition. I did take it outside and give it a try. It was blowing smoke right out of this tailpipe right here, and it was blowing white smoke real bad. It smelled horrible, so I don't want to start it again to show you. I'm concerned that the smoke is actually too much moisture sitting inside the fuel line, and I don't want to cause any further damage to it. But it did run. I'm hoping that maybe it just needs a tune up, get some of that moisture out of the fuel, clean out the fuel system, and the limiter caps are actually still on this thing, so I know that nobody else has been inside here messing with it, which is actually a really good sign. So I'm hoping it's just a fuel issue. The white smoke was most likely steam coming from all the extra water that was inside the fuel system. I'd like to get all that fuel system cleaned out of there and see if that smoke continues. You don't want to run it long with that extra moisture in there, because think about it, it's actually taking away the oil out of the fuel, and that's why I don't want to try it again. Let's get this fuel dumped out of this thing and see what we have as far as quality of fuel. Not having high hopes here. And just as I suspected, it's nothing but water coming out of this thing. Give me a second to get this flipped up and I'll show you what it looks like. Oh yeah, see how cloudy this is? There's also some chunks floating around inside there, and depending upon what type of fuel additive they added to this stuff, I have a feeling it's going to separate. Yeah, that's basically what we're after. I know we have a fuel problem. Alright, let's get this fuel system cleaned out, take apart the carburetor, check out the diaphragms, put it back together, and see if we can give it a try. While this is open, let's pull out the fuel filter and see what it looks like, because we're going to be changing it. It actually smelled bad enough running that I have the door sitting open with the wood stove going. So yeah, Virginia weather. If you don't like it, wait 5 minutes, it'll change. See, 2 T27s, and let's get this air filter off of here. And the air filter, yeah, it's pretty dirty. It could definitely use one of those. The carburetor's behind this metal plate right here, but to get to the fuel line and the throttle cable, it's a lot easier if you take off this orange cover first, and then we will have plenty of room to work on the carburetor itself. Three T27s, 2 on the carburetor, 1 on the metal part here. So pull this plate loose. The carburetor has to separate back from this mounting plate, but it has a nipple that comes through a grommet on the plate here. So let me try to get that separated. There we go. Looks like that gasket was holding on there pretty well too. Separate the fuel line from the carburetor. This one has the impulse hole on the carburetor itself that attaches to the manifold block. And there's a pretty good chance I'm going to end up needing to buy a carb kit for this thing, because I believe I'm going to rip the gaskets taking this carburetor apart. So the metering valve is pretty rigid. I don't know if y'all can hear it ticking, but it's also pretty well deformed. So see all those lines and stuff in there, and it's trying to hold shape. Let's see, the needle's moving up and down pretty easily. That side's pretty clean. Let's get this other side pulled off. And yep, there's part of the problem. Alright, so I don't know if you can see on this fuel pump side, underneath the fuel pump diaphragm, this part right here is very well deformed. It's got a whole lot of trash underneath it. The reed valves look like they're moving okay. And then directly underneath this spot, there's a whole lot of trash. So lots of trash in this area. Let's get this off so you can see what I'm talking about underneath. And there you go. I hope you guys can really see this. Basically, what I'm scraping off of there is just tons and tons of dirt. This side, just a little bit of dirt. And what I really wanted to show you is this fuel screen right here, which is the last spot after the fuel pump and before it goes through to the metering side. Look at all that trash I'm pulling off of that screen. It looks a lot like sawdust. I know a lot of people say that it's not sawdust because sawdust wouldn't make its way down that far. They say it's fuel contamination, but I can tell you it looks just like sawdust, and it's stopping or preventing a whole lot of fuel from going through the screen into the needle side. So, because the other side of that is the needle and the lever. Okay, let's get this thing in the ultrasonic cleaner and give it a good bath. Let me find a carb kit for it. Let's put a spark plug inside this thing. Well, at least check the spark plug. This is a NGK. And oh yeah, that thing is super fouled. It's wet, it's really carboned up. It looks like it's got chunks down inside here. So yep, we're gonna order a spark plug as well. All right, y'all, I got the carburetor all cleaned up. Check out all the passages that I could. Verified that there wasn't any kind of debris in here. I checked for play on the throttle shaft and the choke shaft. I don't see anything there. I was able to open up the throttle plate and I can see into the 3 passages for the low side. So that Welch plug is hiding those 3 passages, one out here behind, actually it would be in front of, or no, it's actually behind the throttle plate. And then there's 2 up in front of the throttle plate up there because the airflow is flowing towards you right now. So those passageways connect into here. That seems to be open. I did not pull out the Welch plug. I did pull the fuel screen. There was quite a bit of debris. I would like to be able to rebuild this factory carburetor as everything appears to be set properly. You know, my metering lever is already set. It was a good Walbro carburetor. I don't see anything wrong other than being dirty. When I was purchasing, and I already had a CTS Walbro K10 HD carb kit, and I had a new NGK plug for it. But when I was buying the air filter and the 2 gaskets for the carb to body configuration, these 2 gaskets and the air filter, for an extra couple of bucks, they sent me a carburetor as well. New fuel filter, spark plug that I do not intend to use, an extra fuel line. So all extra parts that I really don't intend to use if I don't have to. I would like to rebuild the factory carburetor if I can, and I needed these gaskets and that air filter. Stick the old stuff and just push it out the way over here. Remove the metering valve, the needle, and swap it. I'm going to keep my original lever, spring, arm, everything else, but I'm going to change out the valve itself, the needle itself. Then we need to check, once we're done, we need to make sure that we're still at the right height. And we are still at the same height. I've got the true adjusting tools for this, but this model is basically just lining up with a flat edge. So it comes up straight up there. Make sure all that works. Okay, on this side, there is a gasket. And the metering valve. Hoping to get this video out relatively quick, but we just went through Thanksgiving and got to see a lot of family and friends, and it was fantastic. And I hope that everybody, I hope all of y'all had an opportunity to spend time with family and friends and had an opportunity to be grateful for or thankful for the season. That's what I was looking for. A little screen out the way, because I've got too much stuff going on here on the bench. Set that screen down in place. Set my new fuel pump and reed valves on. You notice the fuel pump has to be complete, and if I flip this over, basically if it was wrong, you can see that it's kind of offset, right? So if you're looking at something like this and the holes don't seem to match up, obviously you got to flip it over. So if it's in the right position, your passageways should all line up. Like that hole there, you know, lines up properly. That hole lines up, that one lines up. These valves are covering up holes like they're supposed to. Okay, and then I'll put this gasket on, and again, the exact same thing. If this was backwards, you can see that it's not going to line up properly. I don't know, maybe it's hard to tell, but anyhow, that's how it goes. Like that. All right, just like that. Now carburetor is rebuilt. This kit does not come with extra Welch plugs, so I would have to dig one out anyhow if I was redoing it. Let's see, new BPMR 7A spark plug. You notice here's your coil right in here if you needed to gap that. And here's my throttle linkage. Pull this gasket off. Make sure nothing remains, and make sure that that hole lines up with that passageway. Because if it doesn't, if you close it off, the impulse that's coming out of here is not going to drive that carburetor, not going to drive that metering valve. Make sure that's good and clean. Drop those on like that. We're going to set one of these gaskets in place. And then this barb has to go through there. Go ahead and set it in place so you can get a good purchase on it. Again, make sure that this gasket here lines up with that impulse line. So if I put it on that way, it lines up. If I put it on that way, it would not. So make sure that those line up. I'm going to take this right here. This has a little bit of a cutout on this side. The other side does not. So the cutout side has to line up with this cable right here. So right now it needs to face in the upwards position. I'll slide it up on there like that. And with everything in place and held, we're going to get the screw started. All right, the screws are started. That should hold that. We want to go ahead and get this fuel line put on. Tell you what, we're going to go ahead and replace this fuel line. Just because it's a little bit rigid on this side, I honestly think it would work. But since we have it, and we've already pulled it off once, it's probably worth changing. You see I'm struggling to get it off of here, which means that it's not very soft. You know, I mean, it should be soft enough to just basically open up and slide right off of there. Okay. Still bendable, still squeezable. It's just not quite what we want. Go ahead and measure out a new piece. I want to cut right there. Now make sure we have a good connection. What you can do is perform a vacuum test on that line. So we'll take and pinch off this end. Put a vacuum tester on this end. Make sure I'm on vacuum. And then make sure it holds vacuum. So good line. Attach it back to the carburetor. Fuel filter. This side of the fuel line is in fantastic condition. It's very soft. Not sticky. Before I get too far, let's get this bottom one put back in. Make sure that this arm moves when I move the throttle. All right. That wasn't supposed to go on yet. I might have to pull that plug out too. So if you have a screen on here, spark arrestor screen, that would be a great time to pull it off, make sure that it's clean. And if it's not, throw a torch on it and get it clean. Big difference, huh? There is a flock filter on this side. A lot of times you can just blow the dust off of that. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and do that. So you could also wash them with soap and water. Put that in, put that in. It should fit right on there. You should be able to see the gasket to that air filter seat right in place. This thing still smells like old stale fuel. It feels good. All I got to do is mix up some gas real quick and see if this thing starts and see how she runs. We'll do some fine tuning on the carburetor. It'll be good. If not, we'll go ahead and put that other carburetor in it, and I'm sure at that point it'll be good. But I'd really like to use this OEM one if I can. All right. Well, it's super cold out for Virginia standards anyway. Put some fuel in it. I'm going to see if I can fire it up. This one here is run is that way, choke is that way. My high speed screw is on this side. My low speed screw is on this side. And my idle speed screw is right here. So I'm just going to be getting this to the idle speed I want. I'm going to be getting the low speed screw to right about the fastest it can go, and then back it, just richen it just a hair. And then while the throttle is being pulled, I want the high speed screw. It's difficult with a blower because it's always under load. It's not like a chainsaw. So what you can do is put your hand over the end of the nozzle, give it full throttle, and you'll actually hear the difference in the pitch, and you can sometimes adjust the high speed when you're there. What I'd usually do is just listen for it, right? You can actually hear when it sounds like it's running right. But if it's, like I said, if you're new to it and everything else, what you can do is put your hand over the end of it, or put it against the ground, something like that, to cause the air to stay in the fan, and that'll take the load off of the motor, and you can adjust your RPMs at that point. Just a little trick. Let's open up the door, let the heat out, and see if I can get this thing to run. All right, so my start stop is in the run position right now. I'm on choke. Like I said, I've got fuel in the tank. Let's see, I'm gonna have to pull a few times to get it to come up that fuel line that we just replaced and into the carburetor. All right, you heard it pop, right? So I'm gonna turn it to half choke right now. We're gonna let it warm up a little bit. All right, y'all, she's been running for about 5 minutes. Let's take a look now. Most of the smoke and the stale gas smell went away. Yeah, I think she's running all right. You can still see the smoke coming off of that thing. Oil, debris, old stale gas. Does not appear to be running lean. Actually sounds pretty good. But you saw the amount of smoke that came out of that thing. Yeah, that's a Stihl BR380. Carb rebuild, old stale gas. Let it sit for too long and that's probably what's going to happen. Also a tune-up with it along the way. Yeah, I think that should be all right. Hope y'all got something out of the video. Really appreciate you hanging out. I will catch you guys on the next one.